Hello everybody, this is Reverend Kyle here with another Friday spiritual practice video. Today we are going to talk about biblical meditation. If you haven't seen the video that I did on Lectio Divina, which I did a couple weeks ago, I highly recommend you just check that video out. Probably after this video is going to be a little bit of the overarching thoughts and theology of biblical meditation and what this discipline is. Lectio Divina is a form of biblical meditation, a way to do it. And this is important because if we are going to be growing in our Christian faith or progressing in our Christian life, inevitably we will come up against the question, how do I read the Bible? And that might seem like an odd question at first. What do you mean, how do I read the Bible? It's a book, and so I read it like any other book. Except that it's not. It's not just a book. Even if we are going to attribute only in a small capacity some connection between the words that we read on the page and the voice of God speaking, even if you see that connection just a small way, that's going to necessitate that you read this book differently than you would read a spy novel or an adventure tale. And so important is this topic of how we read the Bible. Authors write about this. Christian authors write about this. There's a man named Robert Mulholland Jr. He wrote a book called Shaped by the Word, where he talks about the difference between reading for information and reading for formation. Richard Foster wrote a book called Life with God, and he talks about how we read the Bible in a way so that we will be shaped in our soul by it. So how we read the Bible is an incredibly important thing. And biblical meditation is one of the ways that we read the Bible in order to prayerfully listen to how Jesus speaks into our lives. So we sit with a biblical text and we kind of ruminate on it again and again. We turn it around in our hearts and our minds. The classic image is of a cow chewing its cud just over and over and over. And so that it sinks into us and that we hear God's voice rather than just reading a text. Now, I have to be honest. I didn't always like biblical meditation. And in fact, I was at one point in my life quite against biblical meditation. I didn't think it was a Christian practice. I didn't think we should be doing this. And my objections to biblical meditation was really based on two objections, two reservations that I had with it. Both of which I think were based on just me being uninformed. So firstly, I thought, well, this is a non-Christian practice. Meditation, it doesn't occur anywhere in Christian history. It doesn't occur anywhere in the Bible. We shouldn't be doing this. And that's just not true, right? A cursory study of the Bible, or even if you just do a word search, you will find meditation popping up all throughout Scripture. Meditating on the law, that was a standard practice for the Israelite people. And so you have passages like Joshua instructing the people to not let the words of this law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night. You have Psalm 19, that beautiful prayer that ends, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be always acceptable to you. So you see this time and time again. They had this practice of taking the words of God that they had in the law and the prophets, and they sat with it, and they reflected on it, and they let those words sink into them. Progressing into the New Testament, you don't necessarily see the word meditation all the time, but you do see images of it. You see images of it in James and in Paul's writings, where James talks about look intently into the perfect law that gives freedom. Paul talks about whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is beautiful. Think about these things. And of course, Paul isn't saying, do a linguistic study or intellectually parse these words and try to figure out the definitions. He's not talking about that. He's talking about meditate on these things. Sit with these realities. Be formed by them. Let these things sink within you. He's talking about meditation. And so it's just not true that the Bible is in some way against meditation, and you can't meditate on the Bible. My second objection was that it was somehow opposed to study or to knowledge. So meditation was this airy-fairy, let's just describe our feelings and how does this make me feel and all that kind of stuff. And whereas Christians, what we really should be doing is we should be doing Bible study. We should be doing inductive Bible study, really digging into those words and trying to figure out what the Bible means, right, in some objective way. But again, it's just not true that meditation is opposed to study. And in fact, if you look at the history of Christian meditation, you will see that it's only enhanced by study. So one of the groups who was centered around biblical meditation is monastic communities like Benedictine, Cistercians, Franciscans, and all this kind of stuff. And so they were, their rule of life was usually built around a time of biblical meditation. But that included a time of study. So biblical meditation, spending time with the Bible for the monks and for the nuns, wasn't just reading it. Like, it had a whole host of things. It was transcribing it. It was writing it down. It was memorizing it. But it was also studying it. It was studying what the words meant and how this passage relates to that passage. Which is why if you read some of the ancient literature coming out of the monastic movements of Christian history, it's deeply profound things because they studied what the word was. They studied the Bible in the midst of this overarching resting within it, this biblical meditation. Our meditation, listening to the words of Scripture, letting it soak into us, is only enhanced by study, by knowing more. It's not opposed to it. So you take, for example, the reinstatement of St. Peter, which we find in the Gospel of John. This is where Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" It's a wonderful passage to reflect on and to meditate on. But it's only going to be that much better once we realize that in the Greek language, there are multiple words for love that we translate as love in English. There are multiple words. And in this passage, even though we read, "Do you love me? Yes, I love you. Do you love me? Yes, I love you. Do you love me? Yes, I love you." In the Greek, there's different words at play in this passage. And so our meditation on this passage, our prayerfully listening to it, our sitting with it, it's only going to be enhanced if you actually know that, if you study. So it's just not true. It's not true that biblical meditation is opposed to the intellect or is opposed to study. And it's just not true that it's not a Christian practice. So what is biblical meditation? While meditation is a Christian practice, and while biblical meditation is a Christian practice, I think we do need to recognize that this is not the same thing as what might be termed mystical meditation or Eastern meditation. And I'm not going to go into the full nuances of that, but suffice it to say that normally what we think in terms of mystical meditation, that involves a desire to empty yourself. That's what you're really trying to do. So often there's a use of a mantra, which is usually a word or a phrase which is given by a guru or a leader. You might not actually know what meaning of the word is, or it might just be a sound, om, or whatever it is. But the reason you say that mantra, or you say that word, or you make that sound, is because you are trying to jettison out of you all impulses, all thoughts, all reflection. You're trying to be an empty vessel, right? Free from all desires, or all wants, or all will, so that you can just be pure and empty. That's not the same thing that what we're talking about. That is not the same thing as biblical meditation. Biblical meditation is being filled with the words of Scripture. So you are not attempting to empty yourself. You are trying to fill yourself. There is a settledness, there is a stillness, there is kind of a restedness and a reliance upon the words of Scripture, which is involved. You are attempting to sit with Scripture and allow the words of what you're reading to fill your life. And as you let the words fill your life, the idea is that you are letting God fill your life as well. So that's the fundamental difference. You are not emptying yourself in any way. You are trying to be filled with the voice of the Lord. You are trying to be filled with God's presence. Now, lest you think that this is just a semantic twist, and it doesn't really matter, it's just, you're just kind of parsing words. There is one thing that has helped me really to understand biblical meditation in its fullness. Wine tasting. Now, just bear with me. You'll see where I'm going. My wife and I, we love going down to our local liquor store, and we like to go to the wine tastings that's there. And over time, we've picked up a few tricks along the way about how you do this. So wine tasting is not the same thing as wine drinking. Wine tasting is about being present with the wine which is in your glass, and then describing how you are interacting with that wine. So you're going to see people go, they're going to look at the color and, I see a deep rusty color, or this is a pale ruby, and they're going to smell it and say, I get hints of persimmon, or I smell strawberries, or there's a grassy note on this, and they're going to drink it and they're going to describe, the nuances of what they're tasting. But what they are trying to do is they're trying to describe how they are receiving it, right? And so they're sitting with the experience of the wine in their mouths, or on their palate, or in their nose, their experience, but they're sitting with it and they're giving voice to it. They're giving voice to what they're experiencing. It does take a certain amount of focus. It takes a certain amount of patience, but that's what they're doing. And it's actually the same thing with biblical meditation. You're sitting with this passage, whatever it might be, and you're trying to be present with it. You're trying to hold in your mind and you're holding in your heart the words that you read, but also the words that you're hearing. And then as you do that, you are trying to give voice to how you are interacting with that word, how you are experiencing that. Which is why if you think about Lectio Divina, there are these 4 movements, all with subtle nuances to help you maybe describe how that word is speaking within you. So that's what biblical meditation is. You are sitting with the words of Scripture in a way that you are being present with it, and you are letting it sink down deep within you in such a way that you can then give voice to how that word is affecting you, to how God speaking through this passage is speaking into your life. That is biblical meditation. So there we are. If you want to know about the Lectio Divina form, then go check out that video that I did. But I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to know how you experience biblical meditation in your life. And if there is a discipline or if there is a practice that you would like me to do a video on, please just comment or press that like or just reach out to me and let me know what you would like me to address. God bless you as you go through this time learning about spiritual practices and how you can live out your faith with joy and intentionality. God bless you all.